Okay, welcome to Illustrator. I'm going to be reviewing some of the tools here. To start off with, just so we have some things available to us that we'll need. In our Illustrator, if you go to Window, you're going to see Workspace over here. And mine is clicked on Essentials. This is in some ways similar to Photoshop, where depending on the kind of project you're working on, you may want to switch your workspace. You can of course also just bring up whatever windows you particularly want and close the other ones out. If you like working with the Essentials like I usually do, and you start messing up some things or moving things around, you can reset Essentials and that'll kind of bring you back. What we're going to want right now is at least the layers window up, and as we work with the layers window, you're going to see that it very quickly makes its own layers, and that's a good thing, but it is a little different than Photoshop, because in Photoshop, you know, some of the things you did would create a new layer, others wouldn't, but this one, every single thing makes a new layer or sub-layer. So to start off here, similar again to Photoshop, is if you want to see this as a single column, you may, but I'll keep it as a double so that you can see all the color information down here. These were similar again to something in Photoshop, but we did not cover this extensively. But here, instead of a move tool, we have a selection tool. And the selection tool does a few different things, but let's go ahead and make a new file for now. So if you go to File, New, again, similar to Photoshop, you needed to choose what sort of file you're intending on creating. It's a little less important for this project than it would be for Photoshop, because this project creates vectors, meaning it sees things differently than just pixel by pixel. You can save things pixel by pixel, but it's basically a mathematical algorithm, for lack of a better term. It can make its files any size you need them to be. It's not dependent on pixel resolution. So here you can see there is no resolution even set. If you want more settings, the only thing that it will allow a particular pixel set for is only a raster effect, and that's where there's some things that sometimes the program can't quite do. It can mimic it, so it'll make it look, and a raster is the pixel by pixel based PPI that we used in Photoshop, but you can choose it here. I would just always keep it at 300. There's no need to do it lesser than that. And you know, basically over here you can just get to it from here anyway. You know, if you're in the practice of creating things for print, you might want to just get used to some of those basic defaults. But again, you can punch in your own width and your own height. Here, if you typically in Illustrator we do use points, but if that bothers you, you can always work in inches or picas or any of these ones that work for you. Again, it might be dependent on what you're creating. If you're creating things for the web, you probably might do better to think in pixels. If you're creating something for print primarily, might be best to start off with inches. You can always convert to pixels later as you save JPEGs and things like that. Again, orientation, you can change any of those things you want. Artboards, you can create them on the fly, but there's always the assumption that you're going to be using artboards in Illustrator. So you do not. It's an automatic 1. If you notice here, there is no. You can't go less than 1. There's automatically going to be 1 here. Now, bleed is something that refers to printing. Basically, you know, when you print off of your inkjet printers or anything off of, from home or the library or anything like that, you can never print to the edge of a piece of paper. It won't let you. There's always at least a 1/4 inch around the edges, because it doesn't want to wreck itself by spreading ink everywhere. However, if you're dealing with a professional printer, you actually have to, and you want something to be printed to the edge, you need to make it larger than it actually will be in its final version. So basically it just means the printer's going to chop off some extra. So if you wanted something that goes blue from corner to corner, you would need to add a bleed, and these are defaults. You can always add your own, and specific printers will have their own. When we get to the project for business card, this will be reviewed more in depth, but for now you do not have to have it for this particular exercise that you'll be doing, or the first project of the still life. Only the logo project will need a little bit of a bleed, but for now you can keep it at nothing. The color mode again will depend on your particular use. If you know for sure you're gonna do some print work, keep it in CMYK. If it's only going to be web, you can do RGB. There is a slight differentiation in color, being that the RGB will always be brighter. It's because you're thinking through screen and through light. So millions of color versus what the 300 ppi is quite a bit of a difference. And so generally, if you pick really bold, bright colors for RGB and you switch it to CMYK, because you can flip-flop back and forth, you will get the CMYK colors will look dull, more dull. Now, if you start with CMYK and you switch to RGB, there's no loss there. But if you go the opposite way, there could be a little bit of a loss in intensity or brightness or saturation of your colors. For more settings, again, there's not really anything in this area that you'd need to worry about. It's only down here that we would possibly change something. So I'm just going to keep it as such. It's pretty simplistic, but that's fine. You may go ahead and name it. It's not going to save it yet, but you can name it, and when you go to save, it'll keep that setting. Okay, so all that to say, now you have a new file, and we will now begin with actually using the tools. So I'll get to that in the next video.